Well, spring is here, I guess. We haven't had the first day of spring, though, yet, have we? I think I saw on the internet that first day of spring, that's the day that that comet's supposed to hit the earth. So
That'll do it.
yeah, that ought to fix everything. You know, if something like that happens, they start running all of those asteroid or comet or impact movies on cable TV. Get you all in the right frame of mind. I assume you have sprung forward. Your clocks are set. We live in a house where most of our time contrivances do that all by themselves. So that's good. But if you had to do some manual calculation, then we have several who are here this morning. Evidently they're on time for Sunday school. There is preparation underway for Easter for the children to distribute a jelly bean Easter bag. And not just jelly beans, but the gospel message told in coded colors. We've been doing that for a long time. I remember many years ago, even in Vacation Bible School, we made little bracelets that had beads on them of various colors. And each color on the bracelet represented a certain step in the plan of salvation. And booklets or tracts came with it, and I guess a variety of different little booklets and pamphlets that came out like that. And so we'll be distributing something like that. So I think with previous Easter offerings, we have given away all the plastic eggs that we had. And so we've kind of, that's good. You know, we've kind of taken that away as an option, so we won't be doing the same thing all the time. But if you can help by bringing jelly beans, if you want to contribute something to this project, we'll be making lots of little bags, and the Plan of Salvation pamphlet or page will be coming with it. If you'd like to contribute, then if you go out in the next week or so, Sunday week, not next Sunday, but the following Sunday, is Palm Sunday, the Sunday before Easter. Then the 4th of April is Easter Sunday. And so if you go out, or if there is someone who shops for you, I ask them to pick you up a bag of jelly beans. They shouldn't be hard to find. Most of our places where we shop have entire rows dedicated to whatever the season is. I don't think Walmart is putting out their Easter stuff yet, but that's very soon.
It's thin out.
Is it? So I guess next week they'll have their Christmas stuff out.
Yeah, probably about right.
Pretty close, at least 4th of July.
Jelly beans, jelly beans. Danny mentioned that President Reagan there's a gourmet, imagine that, gourmet jelly bean called Jelly Bellies. And I don't know if I've ever had any or not.
Well, they say that President Reagan picked up jelly beans when he quit smoking.
Terry and I had a big fight many years ago. She claimed that we could blindfold her and we could feed her M&Ms and she could tell us what flavor they were. Can't remember how that turned out. I'm pretty sure she won the argument.
Chocolate.
It tastes like chocolate.
They're all chocolate.
They're all chocolate.
I could tell if it was red or yellow.
Orange or blue. I think the blue one's a new affectation, only in the last few years, blue. The M&M commercial always confuses me because evidently those characters want you to consume them, which is part 15 in the Gospel of Luke. And oddly enough, our Sunday School Quarterly leads us to look at the 15th chapter of the Gospel of Luke. And the 15th chapter of the Gospel of Luke is one of the most iconic chapters of his Gospel. Today is March the 14th of 2021. We're moving right along. We've got a new grandbaby on the way that she is percolating, and looks like she's getting getting her hindquarters up in the air and head tucked down, ready to arrive. Can't wait until she gets here. I think she's going to probably shake up our world. And we're looking forward to it. So pray for Carice and Brian and Addison and Avery. Continue to pray for Austin and Miriam. I think their baby's going to be is due in May, not very far. And I don't know about Pam and Murad out in Las Vegas, but we got 3 babies in our church family that are on the way.
I got a great-grandson on the way.
Really? Wonderful, wonderful.
Baby boy.
Uh-huh.
His boy. His wife is expecting a little boy.
That's wonderful.
We found out yesterday.
We've got
That's
2
wonderful.
great-grandbabies on the way.
Oh, my God.
Who?
2 great-grandbabies.
My goodness.
Don't know what the sex is yet.
Yeah.
So,
Babies everywhere. Spring is strong.
so the quarantine has not been for a complete loss. Yeah. We found something to do, I guess. I remember the very first time I saw a Ron D. Consini painting. I was at the Baptist bookstore in Nashville. I find this hard to believe. I'm not going to tell you because I'm going to tell you and then I won't believe it. When we, years ago, when we needed something from the Baptist bookstore, we had to drive to Nashville. Yeah, because that's where, what did we call it then? The Sunday School Board. Southern Baptist Convention Sunday School Board was in Nashville. And it was a huge building there in the center of Nashville, right off Broadway. And right in front of it, in front of the Sunday School Board, was a little bitty store. And I mean little bitty, and it had parking places for about 20 cars. Right on Broadway, right down the road, probably 2-3 blocks from the Ryman Auditorium, was the Baptist bookstore. And I remember when they built a Baptist bookstore in Birmingham. And I said, oh, good. Now we only have to drive an hour and a half instead of 2 hours. When actually going to Birmingham back then was such a bigger hassle than it's ever been to drive to Nashville. If you're old like me, and you are, you could only drive so far on Highway 31 and it was 2-lane, and then you just quit. And you get on Interstate 65 for a little bit, and then you had to, when you got right into after Birmingham, you had to get off what little interstate there was, and you had to go down through the center of town. But anyway, I was in the Nashville. And I guess it was about that time, or maybe it's been the way of Baptist bookstores always, but the greater part, I believe, probably of their inventory didn't have anything to do with books or literature. It was their gifts, and they had decorations. Previously, I guess most people's homes Christian homes have been decorated by homemade or handmade things. But a whole world of products sprang up that were Christian themed, that were becoming available. And you could find them in such places as the Baptist bookstore. Something else was happening of which I was unaware. Now I have mentioned to you, Danny and I sang Amy Grant's song, Thy Word is a Lamp, I guess it's called Thy Word is the name of the song. And young Christian artists were writing contemporary songs, songs that sounded very much like the songs that we always grew up with or that we enjoyed listening to on the radio, but they had a Christian message. Since then, you can listen to Christian rock and roll, you can listen to Christian heavy metal, Christian country and western. It is, I guess, in about every genre. But I remember that there have always been people who would depict Christian themes in paintings and sculpture. But for the most part, they all seem to fit within the classification for me of like Renaissance art. It was like biblical scenes, and yet nothing particularly that it would always very seldom look like anything contemporary. And then they began to appear. I remember seeing this, and I had never seen anything like it. It's called The Prodigal by Ron DeConcini, and it's depicting the story of that we see in Luke's Gospel, chapter 15. The house is up here on the hill. These are the man's fields. He seems to be well-to-do. He's dressed nicely. He's the father of the story. There's a servant coming. He's got some shoes and a new change of clothing he's bringing with him, according to the father's demands. Do you know what's striking about this, though, and why it's different? Do you see what's striking about what the painter has painted?
The man is in clothes of today.
Yeah.
Yeah, modern clothes.
He's got Levi's on, blue jeans and some leather loafers, and a blue collar shirt with a Fruit Loop here in the back. Got the sleeves rolled up, and he's wearing a watch. So it's me, it's you. I remember this because I don't think I had any shame on that day, but I remember just weeping openly, just standing before them. It was huge. It was about as big as this, I guess, or bigger. And I just stood there in the aisle in the gift section at the Baptist bookstore, and just tears running down my face. I don't know if anybody saw me or not, or I didn't care. Nobody came up to, I guess if they had seen me, they'd know that I was having a moment. But there are some rings on the father's hand, and that's part of the story too. He gave his son a ring, and so what? Did he bring a ring? Did he have a ring in his pocket? No, it was his ring. He may have worn it. It looks like it's got two rings, but it looks like he's got a ring or two on that hand. But Father put a ring on his finger, and he's thanking God. Now, I just thought it still brings great emotion. If you have access to the internet, go check out Ron DeConcini and type in his name and look at his paintings, because all of them are touching and inspirational. Luke chapter 15 has 3 parables in it of great note. I've heard some of the greatest preaching and teaching, some of the greatest songs, and now some of the greatest paintings that found their theme in this chapter. Jesus talked about a lost sheep, a lost coin, and a lost son. And I think that there today, and I grew up in the evangelical tradition, that we use the word lost as it is used often in the Bible to describe someone who's not a Christian, someone who's away from God. It is empty, kind of a hopeless sounding word to be lost. I was watching a TikTok this morning, and this teenage girl couldn't find her tennis shoes. And so her mother was chastising her and saying, obviously, they must not mean very much to you, or you'd know where they were. And this little girl said, the teenager said, well, you used to lose me in Kroger's 4 or 5 times a week.
Oh my gosh.
And then the TikTok ends. When I worked for Kroger's, we would have sometimes crying children come looking for their mommy. And their mommy was probably just rounded the corner, but grocery store is a scary place, like big aisles and counters. It's no fun being lost. A number of years ago, and it seems like a long, long time ago now, there was a television series on TV called Lost. And no one knew. No one who was watching that show for, 6 years. No one knew that show would wind up with all the characters in church going to heaven with Jesus, a statue of Jesus standing above them, and the light at the back door. And after all their trials and tribulations, it seemed at times they were lost, but they never were. So many things, and that's really what the television series was about, was that they were trying so hard and so desperately to be free or to be rescued or to get off the terrible island, and yet when they were on that island, they were just exactly where God wanted them to be. You know how God got them on the island?
Plane crash.
Yeah, He crashed their airplane. And they tried desperately. We've got to be rescued. We've got to get off this terrible island. There was one man, however, his name was John Locke. He's one of my favorite characters. When he was on the airplane, he was in a wheelchair, or had got out of the wheelchair to get in his, but he was crippled. He had been thrown out of a building, and he could not walk. His life, it was actually a member of his family that had tried to kill him, and his life was ruined. He was betrayed. And with all of the carnage and the tragedy and the suffering, after the plane crash, you saw John Locke, not in a wheelchair, but up and walking about in the midst of all of the fire and the crash, and just after they crashed on the beach. And he looked very peaceful and actually was smiling. An unusual smile. He had an orange in his mouth, an orange segment. So a little humor during the middle of the crash. Nobody seemed to appreciate it. Do you know what happened in that story? They got off the island. They did. They were rescued. They got away from that terrible, awful island. They got away. You know what the rest of this television series was about? Trying to get back.
Trying to get back to the island.
Trying to get back. So lost can mean a lot of things. As a matter of fact, a lot of people that followed that series as devotees were so angry and upset at the ending. I thought, they all went to heaven. Not all of them. Some of them, they didn't let him get back into church. One particularly mean guy that the show seemed to try so desperately to redeem him, but he knew, he still had some penance to do. It's important to understand, though, that all three of these are really about the same thing. Same kind of thing. All three are to address a question that was asked of Jesus. he was teaching. The tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus, but the Pharisees and teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Sharing a meal with people is one of the most intimate things you can do. Now, reach back and see if Ronnie remembers. Ronnie, you remember taking when you were dating and you took a young teenage girl out to eat? You were going to go to get a burger or something, or maybe to a really high level, like a nice restaurant like Shoney's.
Remember well.
Yeah. How much did your girlfriend eat, or what did she order?
Not a whole lot.
No. Ooh, I'll just have a little of yours. Because they were concerned that if you're on a date and you got your lipstick on and your hair and your clothes and you're going, you know, it's, what are you doing? As Bill Engvall would say, being sexy. So eating in front of people, you're going to give yourself away. Do you have table manners? Do you use a napkin? Do you use silverware? Do you say please and thank you? Are you kind to the people who are waiting on you? I like to be mean to people who are waiting on our table. I like, after they take our order, when they come back, just before they bring the food, I like to say, we've changed our mind about what we want to eat. And these little girls, they just look crestfallen. And not all of them. Some of them know people like me, and they just say, "Oh, you shut up." A lot of them still bring me the check at the end of the meal. I say, "Honey, do I look like I have money? Here's my supervisor. Give her the check. I don't have any money in my pocket." She gives me a credit card and tells me how much money is on it. And I know that that's her way of saying, you can't spend any more than that. Jesus ate with people. A Christian teacher a number of years ago mentioned about Jesus might have burped or belched at a meal, and it just incensed the entire Christian world. I thought they were going to kill this guy, thinking Jesus might burp or belch or other things that have to do with digestion or eating. Imagine Jesus was pretty human. Imagine he got a little mustard on the corner of his mouth, a little bit of gravy in his beard maybe. Jesus, you got a little smudge right there on your chin, right there. Yeah, that's good. And Jesus would wipe it off and look, and then what would he do? He'd lick it off. Yeah, that was from yesterday. I remember that. Don't send me email. No, we're not nearly as sensitive, I think, as we were. But this man welcomed sinners. Very odd behavior. We're not sinners, but he welcomes sinners, and he eats with them, which is really nasty. Because even though there was a world that Jesus lived in, if he was eating with sinners, do you know what there's a high possibility of what they had on the table at those meals? Do you know what they were probably eating? Pork, maybe. Bologna. Rabbit. Frog legs.
Have you ever eaten frog legs?
Yes, I have. I love them. They don't taste anything like chicken.
I started to say, when
had a pond out there, and Mother was always.
She'd go to the pond. Yeah, they're just everywhere.
Frog legs.
Bring in frogs. Frog legs.
People look at you now like, frog legs.
My mom used to eat frog legs. Not me, but my mom would.
I remember you used to be able to go to almost any store in town and buy a frog gig. It was a little three-pronged, about that big. And it had a thing that you could fit it on the end of a pole. And the pole needed to be about 8 or 10 feet long, and you had a flashlight. And we didn't have a lot of modern contrivances, so you had to figure out, somebody was going to have to hold the flashlight, or you had to, well, it was before the duct tape. We couldn't duct tape it to our head. Figure how to wire it to our cap or something. You needed a light. See those frogs on the bank there, just before they jumped in the water, gigging frogs. And so that was fun. Remember, often when Pleasant Valley Baptist Church used to have the greatest preachers in the world. I mean, looking back now, the people that they had come by there, that little bitty church in the middle of nowhere on Birch Springs Road, they would have Bible conferences and revivals and great preachers. And that's where I first heard Junior Hill. And when Junior came to preach a revival, and sometimes revivals were 2 weeks long or a week long, and they always fed the preacher an evening meal, sometimes more. But he always looked forward to going to Pleasant Valley. You know why? To preach. Because Terry's mom and daddy would have him over to the house, and they almost always served frog legs. And she talk about those frog legs. They're fresh. You put them in that grease, and they'll jump around, try to get out. Well, sinners will eat almost anything. Jesus knew, because he was smarter than Paul, and Paul knew, Paul the apostle. Jesus didn't walk in and said, "What's in this soup?" Don't ever do that. Saw another TikTok where a woman says, "I'm going to fix some lunch." And the husband said, "What are my options?" She said, "Yeah or no." That's it. That's pretty much the way my mama fixed meals. I don't remember my mom ever saying, "What do y'all want for dinner?" I don't remember that question. What do y'all want for dinner? What are my options, Mama? I think we didn't have any options. I think it was always yeah. I don't think there was any no. Danny was pretty particular about what he would eat. I think he ate a lot of things growing up. Terry would pack her jaws full of it and then go to the bathroom and spit it out. So that was her way of dealing with it. I just ate everything. I thought Little Mama's poke salad smelled awful. And I would give almost anything right now for a mess of poke salad. Or just to smell it cooking. I remember my good friend, Marvin Pynchon. He said, "You ever had any chitlins?" I said, "No, I haven't. I've heard of chitlins all my life." He said, "I'm going to cook you some chitlins." Okay. People say things like that to me all the time. I see you at church Sunday. Said, okay. All right. Okay. We'll fix you some chitlins. So he called me. "You got your chitlins done. They're on the stove." I knew exactly where he lived. He lived on Highway 36 at the time. And I went over there, and when you walk in the house, you can tell it's chitlins cooking. I didn't know at the time, but I know now. It just smells like a barnyard. It just smelled like a barnyard. You know what it tastes like? Never mind. Tastes like a barnyard. So I had some chitlins. They were good. He's a good cook. And but I prefer fried chitlins. They're more like a pork rind. Then you fry them, deep fry them, and they're crispy and crunchy. You put lots of salt and seasoning on them, Cajun salt, and it's just like eating a big, thick pork rind or a pork belly. Until you find a piece of corn. They're called stump whooped, and that's where you take a chitlin, it's an entrail, and you slap it against a stump. Are you time? Okay, we'll move on. He eats with sinners. And so Jesus says there was a man who had 2 sons. Now he told the story of the sheep first. Now, in the story of the sheep and the shepherd, it said a man had 100 sheep and one of them went away. He left the 99 and he went looking for the lost sheep. Now, it was lost in that it had strayed away. It was no longer a part of the congregation or the flock. But that sheep still belonged to him. The sheep still had a shepherd. And even though he was out there in the wilderness, I saw another video this week where some people were, a man and his son were out on a four-wheeler, and they were just riding around all over their property looking for cast sheep. And they found a sheep that had rolled over on its back, and it was dying. And actually, they had a dog who jumped off the four-wheeler and went over there and actually was able to get this sheep, that probably weighed 150 pounds, was able to get that sheep back up on its feet again, legs. And so, the story of the lost sheep is, he's answering their question. Why do you welcome sinners? And what he was saying was, I'm eating with lost people. I welcome lost people. They're like sheep who've gone astray. And then he said, it's like a woman who had lost a coin. And the word that he uses lets us know that it's like the dowry necklace. When she was married, her father gave her husband a necklace that had coins. I have some coins that have a hole in the middle of them, and the reason that you didn't carry them in a wallet, you threaded them on a piece of leather or a chain or something, and that's how you kept up with them on a ring. She had 10 coins, and she lost one. And so what those coins were for was, it's not like here I'm paying you to take my daughter off my hands, but last Saturday, family and friends had a bridal shower for Carice, and baby shower. I said bridal, didn't I? Baby shower. So, but lots of diapers and things, and things that she will need. They have lots of dancing shoes now and leotards, but not a lot of diapers and wipes. Well, I guess they do now. It's very kind. It's a way of saying, we want to do something for you. We want to celebrate this baby's impending arrival. So this 10 coins are, in case you need it. Dad was saying, I want to kind of give you a little nest egg, Terry had a hope chest. We still have it. It's in the barn.
Well, the coin might have been like a year's salary for that woman.
Yeah, it could have been a lot of money. But I think, how did you lose it? Well, we do. But Jesus said it's a value. And, the shepherd, you say, well, how could you let a sheep get away? Well, that's what sheep do. They stray. And you can't really get mad at the sheep because that's what a sheep does. And the shepherd was being very vigilant. You can't say, well, the shepherd was not being vigilant. But, the sheep stray. Now, the woman lost the coin. You can't say, well, the coins just wander away. Because they don't. You lose them. You're careless. How could that happen? How could you be counting your coins and realize that one of them is missing? You were looking at them, or you were counting them, or you were retying the string and one of them fell off and you didn't realize it, and then later on you count them and then you only have 9. Jesus said sometimes it's not anything that anybody did wrong, but it's like a sheep, you got to go get them. You need to go get them. And the rest of the flock, you Pharisees and teachers, you need to be good with that. And Jesus said, well, he left the 99, and the 99 said, hey. He said, no, you need to be good with that. You stay here. I'm not all about the 90 and 9. And you need to be happy that if you ever get lost out there, I'm coming to get you. Don't be upset because I left you to go get the one. And then, but he said, sometimes if you have a friend or a loved one, sometimes in relationships, sometimes we lose friends. Sometimes my carelessness, something I said, something I did, something I didn't do. It's my fault. Jesus said if you're going to church and you're getting ready to give your offering, he said all of a sudden you realize I'm to blame for me and my friend or me and my loved one not being. Jesus said, well, leave church. He said, forget your offering. God doesn't care. Go take care of business. Leave everything there. And it might be there when you get back, it might not. But he says, go. So you need to take care of that. And that's the way a coin is. Now a son, from everything we can tell, this man had 2 sons, and that he was a good father. And so it says, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. And one point that we often miss with this is that he divided his, at that point, he divided his estate, and he didn't just give this younger one his part, he gave them both their part. Then, he didn't just give it, and so it's not just giving, it says he gave them. His younger son said, I know I'm not supposed to get this until you die, but I can't wait till you die, I need it now. And so this is a good man, and he's not really the point of the message, but, I'm thinking, I'm a father, my son or daughter comes to me and say, I'd kind of like my inheritance. My answer is, no, and then you're not in the will anymore at all anyway. So, he divided his estate between them. Not long after that, the young son, it doesn't say as soon as the money hit his account, he was gone. It says not long after that. You know what that means? He never did have a plan. He never did have a plan. He didn't sit down and think, this is what I'm going to do. He didn't have any idea what he was going to do. He didn't have it. Not long after that. Not long after that, he didn't even have a plan. I meet people all the time. They don't even have a plan. They're not seeking God's will, but they also don't even have a will of their own. He set off for a distant country. I guess I still like the King James Version, still calls it far country. And there he squandered his wealth on wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country. At this time, if you were Jewish, probably just about most of the Jews in the entire world lived in Israel, in the land of Israel. If you went to a far country, you might be the only Jew there. And he sent him to his field to feed pigs. That's pretty raw right there. Not allowed to eat pigs. And being around pigs, it comes with its own baggage too. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. It's still very common today. If you harvest grain, all grains come in kind of a shell or a husk. It's wrapped in something. God grows, most things has a peel on it, a protective layer. Isn't that how amazing that could have evolved, huh? That everything has its own little protective little house to grow in. That evolution would have thought of that. It's amazing. But a part of the process of production is to separate the wheat from the chaff, to shuck the corn, to shell the pecans. One of my greatest hobbies when I was a child was not shelling beans. I didn't mind snapping green beans, snap beans, but they had that little string you had to pull on. Still, your fingers hurt after just a little while. Purple Hull peas, though, very good. And Terry's always wanted to, whenever we've had a garden, she wanted Purple Hull peas. And they're some of the easiest. So they'll kind of, the shell will kind of, the pod will kind of dry out. If you get it open, then you just kind of run your thumb through it and all the peas come out. But it's still very common today to take that husk, that chaff, those husks, and feed them to the livestock. It still has a lot of nutritional value in it. Terry and I were eating bananas not too long ago, and I said, you know, Terry, it says on the internet that if you eat the peel, that actually the peel of a banana has most of the nutrients. But I've tried. Have you ever eaten the peel of a lemon or the peel of that's pretty bitter stuff. It doesn't taste good to me. Now, every once in a while, I see people, they'll scrape a little bit of an orange or a lemon or a lime on a grater just for a little bit of sprinkling. You know what they call that?
Zest.
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 What a great word. They ought to name a bar of soap after that.
Maybe that's where the name came from.
Yeah, zest. And you get some of just a little bit of zest on it. Whoop, it pops. A little tang. Said he almost did that, but he didn't eat any of that. That's what the pigs eat. When he came to his senses, he says, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and he went to his father. It's amazing what it takes for us to, again, I like the King James Version. It says, you know what it says? It says he came to himself. He said, self, you're an idiot, self. And remember, he's saying, you know, this is what I'm working on. Got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. And he ran to his son, and he threw his arms around him and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Guess what he had? You know, right in here in this part. Guess what he had? Guess what he finally came up with? A plan.
The plan.
He's got a plan. He had a speech. Finally, he had a plan. I'm writing a book right now. I only like a few more chapters on it. It's entitled Getting in the Groove. And it's really all talking about how, if you're going to play a record, you got to get that needle if it's not in the groove. You know, we've got my whole generation. Do you know how we describe things that we thought were good? We called them groovy.
Yeah.
It's groovy. It's like a needle in the right place in a record. It's like knowing what God's plan is for your life and then knowing what God's purpose is. Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. This father said, okay, all right. The father said to, you know, we're really determined to get the religious stuff right, and if we bow how many times, or do we need to cross ourselves? Do we need to bow our heads? Do we lace our fingers together, and how? And do we say, what are the words? And the father's up there saying, yeah. Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let's have a feast and sell it. The fattened calf was a calf that they put up to make him fat, but for sacrifice or for some other great celebration. But and he says, we're going to have a party. But this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Now that's what Jesus is saying here to the Pharisees. Someone cares about sinners enough to even have a meal with him. He said, you ought to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your father has come. Your brother has come home. He replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he's back safe and sound. The older brother came angry and refused to go in, so his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. You never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends." You'll find that children do this a lot. They just really exaggerate and they misstate the whole point. This son had already received his inheritance. He was a very wealthy young man. He said, I never have anything. You never gave me anything. But when this son of yours has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you're always with me and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and he's alive again. He was lost and he's found. Now, in modern times, and this is my last thought, we sentimentally love the prodigal son. Our sermons and songs are about the prodigal son. Our paintings are about the prodigal son. We despise the elder brother. Now, the elder brother had a bad attitude, and he was wrong. But he was a hard worker. He always obeyed his father. He never partied anything. Maybe he didn't have a joyous life, and that may be seen obvious. But, if you ask me, which one of these boys do you want? I say, I want the one who does what I tell him to do. And let me tell you what, I've known prodigal sons all of my life. I've known them all my life. Not that I don't have a prodigal son. We're still tight. Prodigal daughter, no, never had that. I'm very fortunate. We're fortunate. If you think this son straightened up and lived a good life the rest of his life, you have no idea what this person is like. I've known them all my life. They're a foul up from the word go. And they're going to be like that more than likely. Now, maybe there's a success story here or there. He's going to have to forgive this younger son for the rest of his life. After a few more years, he's going to come back and say, I want to try that again, Daddy. So I think to idolize or to sentimentalize the prodigal son, that's not what the story is told about the elder brother. The elder brother was not happy. He says, this is, I know. When I watch a crime drama or something like that and I find out that this guy that killed 93 people found Jesus when they put him in prison, I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to say, well, wow, wonderful. Let's have him lead us in prayer. I have a problem with that. Yeah, maybe he's saved. Maybe Jesus loves him. Maybe he's forgiven. But if he's killed someone I love, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be in heaven with that guy. And I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. The older brother said, you just forgave him. You just put a new ring on his finger and shoes and a robe and having a party. You weren't even mad or upset or angry. And that's it. We pretty much, you'll find that many people, their image of God is that he's walking around and he's mad at us all the time because of the things we have done or haven't done. And I find that God he's not like that at all. He's a lot like Jesus. When Jesus told this story, they were probably thinking about, well, I really like this older brother guy with this prodigal son kid. But Jesus was making a point. Jesus was making a point. This is a good son. This is a crummy son. Did he change his ways? Maybe. I hope so. Probably not. But he was saying, he was talking, and this, remember a couple of weeks ago I talked to you about some times when Jesus was very, very, very harsh and critical of these same people. And he called them hypocrites and whited sepulchres. And he is speaking to them very gently in this chapter, and he's being easier on them. And Jesus had some of the scribes and Pharisees who did believe in him. Nicodemus was a Pharisee. Joseph of Arimathea was a Pharisee and a member of the Sanhedrin. There were people in that line who believed in Jesus and followed him. And he got through to them perhaps with stories just like that. Well, God bless you all. And continue to look. You can look at those 3 parables for the rest of your life and learn so many other things about them than we've touched on today. But let's have a heart and a mind for the lost. And let's don't worry about maybe eating with them, watching TV with them, or dancing with them, or, I don't know, playing golf with them or something. Do something socially. Do something that's a part of what they do every day to become a part of, and then bring them back to the flock, or put them back on the necklace, or bring them back home and put shoes on their feet, so forth. Join us in just a few minutes for our worship service. We're going to be continuing to worship together. Thank you for joining us for Sunday School.